I am Amanda Wilson, 38, and my 17-year-old daughter Isabella has always been close with my mother Eleanor. When Isabella spent 3 days preparing an elaborate birthday dinner for her grandmother turning 65 with 18 family members expected, I never imagined my father Richard would text us hours before. We have decided to celebrate at a restaurant instead, adults only. Seeing my daughter surrounded by food nobody would eat, I made a decision that changed our family forever. If you are watching this and know what it feels like to put your heart into something only to have it shattered, drop a like and subscribe. Let me know where you are watching from as I share how my daughter's disappointment turned into something none of us expected. Life as a single mother has its challenges, but I have always been proud of the relationship I have built with Isabella since my divorce 5 years ago. After Brian and I split up, I threw myself into my career as a real estate agent, working flexible hours so I could be there for my daughter during her formative teenage years. The divorce hit Isabella hard at 12, but she found solace in something unexpected: cooking. What started as simple box mixes and cookie recipes soon evolved into a serious passion. By 14, Isabella was recreating dishes from cooking shows with remarkable precision. By 16, she was developing her own recipes and dreaming of culinary school. I often joked she had skipped past my mediocre cooking genes and inherited some distant relative's talent. My mother Eleanor recognized this gift before anyone else. While I was juggling showings and client meetings, Eleanor would invite Isabella over on weekends to teach her family recipes passed down through generations. They would spend hours in the kitchen floor, dusting their clothes, sharing stories and techniques. Eleanor had always loved cooking, but arthritis in recent years had limited her abilities. Seeing her granddaughter carry on the tradition brought her immense joy. My father Richard was a different story entirely. A retired bank manager, he ran his household the way he ran his branch, with precision control and little room for creative input. Every family gathering revolved around his preferences and schedule. He determined the restaurant for celebrations, the appropriate gifts, even the acceptable topics of conversation. Eleanor had spent 43 years accommodating his rigid expectations, a dynamic that frustrated me, but that she had seemingly accepted. My relationship with my father had always been strained. As a teenager, I rebelled against his control, which only created more tension. After becoming a mother myself, I tried to establish healthier boundaries, limiting our interactions to larger family gatherings, where his domineering personality would be diluted by others' presence. My sister Stephanie had taken a different approach, becoming the peacekeeper who rarely contradicted our father. My brother Michael, the youngest and only son, had always been Richard's favorite, exempt from much of the criticism directed at his sisters. Family celebrations typically meant dinner at whichever upscale restaurant Richard selected, with little input from the guest of honor. Even for significant milestones, the pattern remained consistent. Richard made reservations without consultation. Everyone adjusted their schedules accordingly, and Eleanor pretended to be surprised by his thoughtfulness. For Eleanor's 65th birthday, Isabella wanted something different. 3 weeks before the date, she approached me with an ambitious plan. "Mom, I want to host a special dinner for Grandma," she said, eyes bright with excitement. "Not at a restaurant where Grandpa controls everything, but here where I can make all her favorite foods and we can really celebrate her." I was hesitant initially. Our modest 3-bedroom house was not designed for entertaining 18 people. Plus, I knew Richard would resist any deviation from tradition. But Isabella's enthusiasm was contagious, and the thought of giving my mother a genuine celebration where she was truly the focus appealed to me deeply. "We can transform the living room," Isabella continued, pulling out a notebook filled with sketches and ideas. "We will need to borrow some folding tables from Aunt Stephanie, and I already found these beautiful decorations online that remind me of Grandma's garden." The guest list included my siblings and their families, 2 of Eleanor's closest friends, and 3 of her cousins who lived nearby. 18 people in total, each one significant in my mother's life. Isabella had already thought about dietary restrictions and preferences, noting that Uncle Michael's wife was gluten intolerant and Aunt Stephanie's youngest was going through a picky eating phase. "Do you think Grandpa will be okay with this?" Isabella asked, showing a maturity in recognizing the potential challenge. Let me handle Grandpa, I assured her, though I was less confident than I sounded. This is a beautiful idea, and Grandma will love it. I requested time off work, adjusting my showings and client meetings to support Isabella's plan. This celebration meant scaling back on my commissions for the month, but seeing my daughter's passion and commitment made it worthwhile. I told myself this could be a healing moment for our family, perhaps even a gentle shift in the dynamics that had governed us for too long. What I did not anticipate was how deeply invested Isabella would become, or how thoroughly my father would undermine her efforts. Looking back, the signs were there from the beginning, but I was too caught up in Isabella's excitement to recognize them. My sister Stephanie's hesitation when Isabella called to borrow tables. My brother Michael's non-committal response about attendance. Even Eleanor's surprised tone when Isabella mentioned looking forward to seeing her on her birthday weekend. These subtle hints should have prepared me for what was coming, but sometimes hope blinds us to reality, especially when that hope is carried in the eager hands of a 17-year-old girl determined to create something special. Isabella approached the birthday dinner with the precision of a professional event planner. She created a detailed menu that combined Eleanor's favorite comfort foods with sophisticated touches, reflecting her growing culinary skills. The centerpiece would be Eleanor's beloved pot roast, but elevated with a red wine reduction and fresh herbs. There would be the scalloped potatoes Eleanor had taught Isabella to make when she was 12, alongside roasted asparagus with lemon and garlic. For appetizers, Isabella planned an array of finger foods, including miniature crab cakes, a nod to the family vacation in Maryland that Eleanor often reminisced about. The shopping alone became an adventure spanning 3 days and 5 different stores. We drove 40 minutes to a specialty market for particular cheeses Eleanor had discovered on a trip to Vermont years ago. We visited the farmer's market for fresh produce, where Isabella carefully selected each vegetable, inspecting for quality, with a discerning eye I had never seen in someone her age. The local butcher knew us by name after our third visit to discuss the ideal cut of meat for the pot roast. I had set aside $800 for this celebration, money I had been saving for minor house repairs. When the shopping list expanded, I didn't hesitate to allocate another $200. Isabella's passion deserved this investment, and the look on Eleanor's face would be worth every penny. At home, our kitchen transformed into a command center. Isabella created spreadsheets tracking cooking times, refrigerator space requirements, and serving logistics. Post-it notes labeled every container, detailing contents and final preparation instructions. She tested recipes in advance, making me her willing taste tester as she perfected each dish. The cake has to be absolutely perfect, Isabella insisted 3 nights before the event, staying up until 1 in the morning to practice piping decorative borders. She had designed a 2-tier lemon cake with raspberry filling, decorated with handcrafted sugar flowers that matched the ones in Eleanor's garden. When the first attempt at sugar flowers cracked and broke, Isabella simply wiped away tears of frustration and started again, her determination never wavering. I managed my real estate work remotely, taking calls from the dining room while Isabella occupied the kitchen. Occasionally, I would look up from my laptop to see her lost in concentration, measuring ingredients with scientific precision or chopping vegetables with impressive speed. These moments filled me with a pride so intense it almost hurt. My beautiful, talented daughter was becoming a remarkable young woman before my eyes. The house underwent its own transformation. We pushed furniture against walls to make space for the borrowed tables. Isabella arranged family photos throughout the living room, spanning decades of Eleanor's life. She found pictures I had forgotten existed. Eleanor holding me as a baby, Eleanor at her college graduation, Eleanor and Richard on their wedding day, looking impossibly young and hopeful. These images told the story of a life well lived, a celebration more meaningful than any restaurant dinner could provide. Throughout the preparations, Isabella maintained regular contact with Eleanor, careful not to reveal the surprise while gathering necessary information. "Grandma, remember that chicken dish you made for Easter 3 years ago? Did you use tarragon or thyme? Or I was thinking about that trip to the coast when I was 10. Was it raspberries or blackberries you put in those scones we had for breakfast?" Eleanor responded enthusiastically to these questions, unaware they were research for her own celebration. As a mother, these 3 days offered precious bonding moments with my daughter. Late at night after practice, recipes were sampled and notes made for improvements. We would collapse on the couch exhausted but satisfied. Isabella would share her dreams of culinary school, of perhaps opening her own restaurant someday. I saw a confidence in her I had never witnessed before, as if this project had revealed her true calling. The night before the dinner, Isabella stayed up until 2 in the morning finalizing place settings and menu cards. She had handwritten each guest's name in careful calligraphy, a skill she had taught herself through online tutorials. The dining area looked like something from a magazine spread with borrowed china plates from my neighbor Patricia, arranged precisely on tablecloths Isabella had ironed twice to ensure perfect creases. Looking at her work, I felt a momentary flash of concern. So much effort, so much expectation, but I quickly pushed the thought aside. This would be a magical day, a memory Isabella and Eleanor would cherish forever. My daughter had poured her heart into creating something beautiful, and tomorrow she would see the fruits of her labor reflected in the joy on her grandmother's face. How terribly wrong I was. The first indication that something might be amiss came 3 days before the celebration. Isabella had ordered a special imported cheese that Eleanor had once mentioned loving from a trip to France. The specialty food store called to say the shipment was delayed, and they could not guarantee delivery in time. Isabella took this setback in stride, immediately formulating a backup plan involving a local artisanal cheese that, while not identical, would complement the meal beautifully. It is all about adaptation in the kitchen, she told me, with the wisdom of someone 3 times her age. Chef Gabriel says that on his cooking show all the time. Later that same day, I overheard a phone conversation between Stephanie and someone I assumed was our father. I was gathering extra chairs from the garage when her words caught my attention. "I know, Dad, but they have put so much work into this. Could we not just do both? The dinner at their house and then maybe a smaller celebration another day?" A pause. "Yes, I understand it is your tradition to choose the restaurant, but..." When I entered the house, Stephanie quickly ended her call. Her expression when she saw me carried a guilt that immediately set off alarm bells. "Everything okay?" I asked, casually setting down the chairs. "Oh yes, just work stuff," she replied too quickly. "These place settings are beautiful. Isabella is so talented." Later, as Stephanie was leaving, she hesitated at the door. "Amanda, I just want to say, sometimes plans change, and it is not always in our control. Whatever happens, try to remember that family relationships are complicated." Her cryptic comment left me uneasy, but Isabella was calling from the kitchen about a sauce that needed tasting, and the moment for questions passed. I should have pressed harder, should have demanded clarification. But part of me did not want to acknowledge the possibility of disruption. I wanted to believe in the perfect celebration Isabella had envisioned. 2 days before the dinner, Eleanor texted that she was feeling a bit under the weather but was hoping to feel better soon. The message seemed innocent enough, but my mother had never been one to mention minor ailments. Her generation believed in pushing through discomfort without complaint. The fact that she mentioned feeling unwell struck me as unusual, possibly a preemptive excuse. I kept these concerns from Isabella. She was deep in preparation mode, recovering from a minor setback with the hollandaise sauce that had separated and needed to be remade. Her focus was absolute, and I could not bear to introduce doubt into her process. Instead, I sent Eleanor a cheerful response, wishing her a quick recovery and reminding her how much we were looking forward to Saturday. The following morning, I received a puzzling call from my cousin Jessica. "Just checking about Saturday," she said. "Which celebration should I come to?" Both seemed to overlap time-wise. "What do you mean, both celebrations?" I asked, stepping onto the back porch so Isabella would not overhear. "Oh," Jessica paused awkwardly. "I thought you knew. Uncle Richard called about a reservation at Montclair at 7, but Isabella invited us for 6. I assumed they were connected somehow." My stomach dropped. "Let me get back to you," I managed to say before ending the call. I immediately called Stephanie, who answered on the first ring as if expecting my call. "Did you know Dad is planning a restaurant dinner for Mom's birthday, the same day as Isabella's dinner?" The accusation in my voice was unmistakable. Stephanie's sigh carried years of familial complexity. "He mentioned it last week. I tried to talk him out of it, Amanda. I really did. But you know how he gets when his mind is made up." And you did not think to warn me Isabella has been working non-stop. We have spent hundreds of dollars on food. We have invited 18 people. I thought he would come around once he realized how serious Isabella was, Stephanie defended weakly. Or that Mom would stand up to him this time. You know she never does, I hissed, anger rising. Does everyone else know about this restaurant plan? Stephanie's silence was answer enough. Inside, Isabella was experiencing her own crisis. The special cake leveler had broken mid-use, leaving one layer slightly lopsided. I found her carefully building up frosting to disguise the imperfection, completely unaware of the much larger issue brewing. It will be perfect, she assured me, misinterpreting my worried expression. No one will even notice once it is decorated. I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. Should I warn her now, prepare her for potential disappointment, or would that only distract her when she needed focus most? I chose silence, telling myself there was still time for my father to reconsider, for my mother to assert herself, for the situation to resolve. That evening, I received a text from Eleanor. Looking forward to seeing you this weekend, sweetheart. Love to Isabella. The message was positive, but conspicuously vague. No mention of the dinner, no specific time reference. My unease deepened. Still, I said nothing to Isabella. The dinner preparations were coming together beautifully despite small setbacks. The borrowed tables were arranged perfectly in our living room. The menu was finalized with timing for each dish planned to the minute. Isabella had even created a music playlist featuring Eleanor's favorite songs from various decades. As I watched my daughter meticulously polish the borrowed crystal glasses, I was transported back to my own childhood, to all the times my carefully made plans were dismissed by my father in favor of his own. The science fair I spent weeks preparing for, only to have him schedule a family trip that same weekend. The Sweet 16 party I had organized with friends that he deemed unnecessary since we had already celebrated with family dinner the previous weekend. Each disappointment had been justified as reasonable, practical, adult decision-making. Each had left another small crack in my relationship with him. History was about to repeat itself, and I felt powerless to prevent it. The day of Eleanor's birthday dawned bright and clear. Isabella was up before the sun, her excitement palpable as she moved through the kitchen with purpose. By 8 in the morning, the pot roast was slowly cooking, filling the house with rich, savory aromas. The appetizers were prepped and stored in precise containers ready for final assembly. The cake stood proudly on our counter, its decorations even more beautiful than Isabella had envisioned. The sugar flowers turned out perfectly, she said, carefully adjusting one that had slightly tilted. Do you think Grandma will recognize them as the ones from her garden? She will love them, I assured her, pushing down my growing anxiety. By noon, our home had transformed completely. The dining area looked like something from a high-end catering event. Isabella had created place cards in elegant calligraphy, with small personalized notes for each guest about their special connection to Eleanor. The borrowed china gleamed under strategically placed candles. Family photos spanning decades adorned the walls, telling the story of Eleanor's life in images. The food preparation continued with military precision. Isabella had created a timeline spreadsheet that tracked when each dish needed attention. She moved between tasks with remarkable focus, pausing only to check items off her list, or to adjust a recipe based on how a component had turned out. 2 hours until final vegetable prep, she announced, glancing at the clock. Everything is on schedule. It was 3:15 in the afternoon, less than 3 hours before guests were due to arrive, when my phone chimed with a text message. I was helping Isabella arrange a spectacular charcuterie board, carefully placing thin slices of prosciutto in elegant folds between cheese wedges and clusters of grapes. The moment I saw my father's name on the screen, I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. I stepped into the hallway to read the message. We have decided to celebrate at Eleanor's favorite restaurant instead. Made reservations for 7 p.m. Adults only. We'll send you the details. The casual cruelty of those words, the dismissive brevity, ignited a rage I had rarely experienced. Not even the courtesy of a phone call. Not a word of acknowledgement about Isabella's efforts. just a unilateral decision communicated as an established fact that we were expected to accept without question. I tried calling him immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. I called again and again. On the fourth attempt, I left a message, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. Dad, Isabella has spent 3 days cooking. We have invited 18 people. You cannot just change plans at the last minute. Call me back immediately. He did not call back. I tried my mother next, who answered on the third ring, her voice small and apologetic. Amanda, I am so sorry. Your father felt that a restaurant would be more appropriate for the occasion. Did you tell him about all the work Isabella has done? About the special menu she created just for you? About the 18 people expecting dinner at our house in less than 3 hours? I tried, sweetheart. You know how he gets when he makes up his mind. The familiar excuse, the same one I had heard throughout my childhood, whenever my father's decisions hurt someone. You know how he gets. As if his personality was a force of nature, something to be endured rather than challenged. This is different, Mom. This is not about me this time. This is about Isabella. She has put her heart into this dinner. Perhaps she could join us after the restaurant. Your father did say adults only, but for Isabella, I am sure he would make an exception. The suggestion was so tone-deaf that I almost laughed. That is not the point, Mom. The point is that Isabella cooked for 3 days. She made your favorite foods. She created a beautiful celebration just for you. And now you are choosing Dad's restaurant plan instead. It is not that simple, Amanda. But it was. It was exactly that simple. It was a choice between standing up for what was right and taking the path of least resistance. Once again, my mother had chosen the latter. Who told the other guests? I asked, suddenly realizing the full extent of the situation. Your father called everyone yesterday, she admitted. Stephanie said she would talk to you. The betrayal deepened. Not only had my family known about the change of plans, but they had actively participated in the deception, allowing Isabella to continue her preparations while knowing they would not attend. I ended the call and stood in the hallway trying to compose myself before facing Isabella. How could I tell her? What words could possibly soften this blow? When I returned to the kitchen, Isabella looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw my expression. What is wrong? She asked, setting down the piping bag she had been using to add final touches to an appetizer. Isabella, I need to tell you something, and it is going to be hard to hear. Her face fell as I explained the situation, showing her the text from Richard. She read it twice, then checked her own phone as if expecting to find a message there as well. Finding nothing, she looked up at me with confusion giving way to hurt. But why would they do this? Did I do something wrong? Does Grandma not want my dinner? No, sweetheart, no, I rushed to assure her. This has nothing to do with you or your amazing work. This is about Grandpa being controlling and Grandma not standing up to him. This is their failure, not yours. Isabella looked around the kitchen, taking in the hours of work surrounding us. The perfectly arranged appetizer platters, the sauce simmering on the stove, the cake she had stayed up until 2 a.m. decorating. What about everyone else? Aunt Stephanie, Uncle Michael, Grandma's friends? Apparently Grandpa called them all yesterday to change the plans. Yesterday, the realization that everyone had known while she continued working hit her hard. They all knew, and no one told me. The tears came, then silent at first, then building into body-shaking sobs. I held her as she cried, feeling her 17-year-old frame collapse under the weight of disappointment. This was more than a changed dinner plan. This was a deeply personal rejection, a dismissal of her effort, her talent, her love. What do we do with all this food? She finally asked, gesturing at the abundance surrounding us. It is too much for just us. The practical question grounded me, giving me something concrete to focus on besides my rage. Looking at the feast my daughter had prepared, a feast that deserved appreciation, I made a decision that would alter the course of our family relationships forever. We find people who will appreciate it, I said firmly, an idea taking shape in my mind. People who will value what you have created. Isabella looked skeptical, wiping tears from her cheeks. Who? It is too late to invite other friends. Not friends, I said, pulling out my phone. The community center downtown. They have a program for homeless families, and the women's shelter on Pine Street. Isabella considered this for a moment. Do you think they would want it? Would they even have a way to serve all this? Only one way to find out, I replied already, dialing the number for the community center where I had volunteered during the holidays. Diane Matthews, the center's director, answered on the second ring. When I explained our situation, she was momentarily speechless. Let me understand, she said slowly. You have a complete gourmet meal for 18 people, fully prepared, and you want to donate it to the center. Today? Yes, if you can accommodate it. My daughter is a talented cook, and this food deserves to be enjoyed. Amanda, this is extraordinary. Saturday evening is when many families come for community dinner. We usually serve basic casseroles donated by the church. This would be, she paused, emotion evident in her voice. This would be incredibly special for them. We discussed logistics rapidly. The center had a commercial kitchen with warming equipment. They could accommodate most of the prepared dishes. The cake would be a particular treat, as birthdays at the center were typically celebrated with simple sheet cakes from the grocery store. As I spoke with Diane, I watched Isabella's expression shift. The devastation remained, but something else was emerging purpose. She began sorting dishes, considering which would travel best, which would need reheating instructions. After ending the call with Diane, I contacted Patricia and Thomas next door, who immediately offered their van for transport. Then I called my friend Melissa, who worked at the women's shelter, arranging for some of the food to go there as well. Within 30 minutes, we had developed a complete distribution plan. Isabella approached the new mission with the same meticulousness she had shown in the original preparation. She wrote detailed instructions for each dish, optimal serving temperature, suggested garnishes, reheating methods if necessary. She packed the food in containers that could go directly into ovens or serving stations. The pot roast should rest for 15 minutes. After reheating, she explained as she labeled the container, and the sauce should be warmed separately and poured over just before serving. As we worked, neighbors began arriving to help. Patricia and Thomas brought their teenage sons to assist with carrying. My colleague Jennifer arrived with extra containers and transport bags. Even Mrs. Abernathy from across the street, who rarely left her home due to mobility issues, came to wrap bread baskets and pack dessert plates. Isabella explained her dishes to each helper, taking pride in her creations despite the circumstances. I watched her gradually transform her focus, shifting from personal disappointment to ensuring others would experience her food as intended. The cake needs to be transported very carefully, she instructed Thomas's sons. The sugar flowers are fragile. By 5:30, our caravan of 4 vehicles was loaded and ready. Isabella had changed from her tear-stained shirt into a clean blouse, applying light makeup to hide the evidence of her crying. When I asked if she was sure she wanted to come along rather than staying home to rest, she looked almost offended. Of course I am coming. I need to make sure everything is served properly. The community center was located in a converted warehouse downtown, a space transformed by colorful murals and community artwork. As we arrived and began unloading, Diane met us at the service entrance, her eyes widening at the procession of food containers. This is beyond anything I could have imagined, she said, helping us navigate to the kitchen area. Inside, the center's regular volunteers gathered around in amazement as Isabella directed the setup, explaining each dish with professional authority. The industrial kitchen came alive with activity as warming ovens were preheated and serving stations arranged. We usually have about 40 people on Saturday evenings, Diane explained. Families, individuals, some elderly residents from the neighborhood. They come as much for the community as for the meal. Isabella nodded, making quick calculations. We should slice the pot roast thinner than originally planned. The appetizers can be placed on shared platters rather than individual plates. The cake will need to be cut into smaller pieces. As 6:30 approached, center visitors began arriving, many of them regulars who immediately noticed something different about tonight's setup. The usual cafeteria-style service had been transformed into something resembling a catered event with borrowed serving platters and Eleanor's birthday decorations repurposed to brighten the space. "What is the occasion?" asked an elderly man as he entered, eyeing the elaborate spread with surprise. "A celebration of community. I answered, not wanting to share our personal disappointment with strangers. My daughter is a chef in training. Isabella blushed at this description but did not correct me. Instead, she took her position behind the serving table, ready to explain each dish to the attendees. What happened next was unexpected and healing in ways I could not have anticipated. As the center's visitors moved through the line, their reactions to Isabella's food ranged from appreciative nods to exclamations of delight. Many asked questions about ingredients or preparation methods, which Isabella answered with growing confidence. "This tastes like something from a fancy restaurant," declared a middle-aged woman, returning for a second helping of scalloped potatoes. "Did you really make this yourself, young lady?" Isabella nodded, explaining the technique her grandmother had taught her for getting the perfect cheese-to-cream ratio. A young mother with 2 small children approached Isabella directly. "My daughter has severe food allergies and normally she can hardly eat anything at community meals, but your vegetable dishes are perfect for her. Thank you for labeling everything so clearly." These interactions visibly restored something in Isabella that had been broken by my father's text message. With each compliment, each empty plate returned for seconds, her posture straightened a little more, her smile became a little more genuine. Halfway through the evening, I noticed a woman taking photographs of the food and making notes in a small notebook. Diane introduced her as Lydia Garcia, a local food blogger who volunteered at the center monthly. "This is extraordinary," Lydia told Isabella. "The attention to detail, the balanced flavors. Would you mind if I featured this in my blog? I write about food events in the community and this is something special." Isabella's eyes widened. "Really? You want to write about my food?" "Absolutely. This is restaurant-quality work. And the story behind it, the generosity of sharing it here, that makes it even more compelling." As the evening progressed, I observed my daughter moving through the community center with growing ease, explaining her cooking techniques to interested listeners, accepting compliments with grace, problem-solving when the gravy needed to be thinned slightly for easier serving. The devastation of the afternoon had not disappeared, but it had been transformed into something else, something that looked remarkably like growth. By 8:30, when most of the food had been enjoyed and people were lingering over slices of the birthday cake, Isabella found me by the entrance where I had been helping elderly guests find seats. "Mom," she said quietly, "I think this turned out better than the original plan." I hugged her tightly, marveling at her resilience. "I think you might be right." As we packed up the few remaining items later that evening, Diane approached us with heartfelt thanks. "What you did today," she said, looking directly at Isabella, "was much more than donate food. You brought dignity and celebration to people who rarely experience either. That is a true gift." On the drive home, Isabella was quiet, but not despondent. The car filled with a different kind of silence than the tearful one that had preceded our decision to donate the meal. "I keep thinking about Grandma," she finally said as we turned onto our street. "Do you think she knows what she missed?" "I hope so," I replied honestly, "and I hope she regrets the choice she made." Back home, the evidence of our original plans remained empty. Serving platters borrowed tablecloths now folded neatly on the counterplace cards, with carefully written names lined up in a row. But the devastating emptiness had been replaced by a different feeling, one that felt surprisingly like accomplishment. Before going to bed, I wrote a heartfelt email to my mother, attaching photos of Isabella's preparations and explaining where her birthday dinner had ultimately been served. I did not write it to induce guilt, though that might be an inevitable effect, but to create a record of truth. My daughter deserved to have her efforts acknowledged, even if only in retrospect. The community members who enjoyed Isabella's cooking tonight repeatedly told her it was the best meal they had ever had at the center. I wrote in closing, "She created something beautiful that deserved to be appreciated. I hope someday you get to experience her talent firsthand." I sent the email without rereading it, then turned off my phone for the night. Whatever fallout would come from our actions could wait until morning. Tonight, Isabella and I had found our own resolution to a painful situation, and that was enough. The following morning, I awoke to a phone full of notifications. Lydia Garcia, the food blogger from the community center, had posted about Isabella's meal overnight, complete with beautiful photographs and the story of how a 17-year-old chef had transformed a personal disappointment into a plea-seedy community celebration. Rarely have I tasted such thoughtful, expertly prepared food at any restaurant in our city, let alone at a community dinner, she wrote. Each dish showed remarkable attention to detail and technical skill, from the perfectly cooked pot roast with its complex wine-infused sauce to the handcrafted sugar flowers adorning a lemon raspberry cake that would make professional pastry chefs envious. The post had already been shared hundreds of times, with comments pouring in praising Isabella's generosity and talent. Local community groups had reshared it, adding their own messages of appreciation. Somehow, our private family drama had transformed into a viral story of resilience and giving. Isabella was still sleeping when I received the first text from Eleanor. The timestamp showed 5:42 a.m., suggesting she had spent a restless night. I just saw the photos online. The dinner looked beautiful, Amanda. I am so sorry. Please tell Isabella her work was extraordinary. I did not respond immediately. A simple text could not undo the hurt my parents had caused. As I was contemplating my response, my phone rang with my father's number. I let it go to voicemail, not ready for that conversation. His message, when it came through, was predictably self-justifying. Amanda, your mother is very upset this morning. That post online made us look terrible. You should have discussed your plans with us before making a public spectacle. Call me back so we can sort this out properly. No apology, no acknowledgement of Isabella's efforts or their last-minute cancellation, just concern about appearances and a demand that I manage the situation to protect his reputation. I deleted the message without returning the call. Throughout the morning, texts arrived from various family members. Stephanie expressed mixed emotions. The food looked amazing. I feel awful about what happened. But did you have to make it so public? Dad is furious. Michael was more directly critical. Way to turn a simple change of plans into a family crisis. The restaurant dinner was fine without the drama. Cousins and aunts sent messages of support for Isabella, many admitting they had been uncomfortable with the sudden venue change, but had not felt empowered to object. The family had splintered into factions, with long-standing tensions brought to the surface by our actions. Isabella emerged from her room around 10, immediately checking her own phone and gasping at what she found. Mom, the post has thousands of shares. People are asking if I cater events. Her excitement was touching, the previous day's heartbreak temporarily overshadowed by this unexpected recognition. As she scrolled through comments, another notification appeared on her screen. She frowned, showing me the message from Eleanor. Grandma wants to come over and talk. She says she is very sorry and wants to see me in person. Before I could respond, another message arrived, this one from an unknown number. Isabella read it aloud, her voice rising with each word. My name is Gabriel Montero, head chef at Provenance Restaurant. I saw Lydia Garcia's post about your cooking and was impressed by both your skill and your generosity. We are looking for a weekend prep cook and would like to discuss the possibility of an internship. Please call me if interested. Isabella nearly dropped her phone in shock. Mom, Chef Gabriel, from Provenance. That is one of the best restaurants in the city. The offer was unexpected, but not entirely surprising given the quality of Isabella's cooking. What was surprising was how quickly our personal family drama had transformed into a potential career opportunity. As Isabella called the number with trembling fingers, I reflected on how differently this weekend had turned out from our expectations. Later that afternoon, after Isabella had spoken with Chef Gabriel and arranged an interview for the following week, we discussed how to respond to Eleanor's request to visit. Do you want to see her? I asked, determined to support whatever decision Isabella made. She considered this carefully. I do, but not today. I need more time. And I want her to come alone, not with Grandpa. I helped her craft a response that was honest but not harsh, expressing her hurt while leaving the door open for future reconciliation. Eleanor replied immediately, accepting Isabella's terms without protest. Throughout the day, Isabella alternated between excitement about the internship possibility and processing her feelings about the family situation. We ordered pizza for dinner, neither of us having the energy to cook after the previous day's marathon food preparation. "Do you think Grandpa will ever apologize?" Isabella asked as we sat on the couch with our pizza. "I would not count on it," I answered honestly. "In 40 years, I have never heard him give a genuine apology." "Then how does anything ever get resolved in the family?" "Usually it does not. People just pretend nothing happened until the next crisis." Isabella considered this. "That seems exhausting." "It is," I agreed. "And it is not how I want to live or how I want you to learn to handle relationships." As evening approached, I received increasingly insistent messages from family members pressuring me to answer my father's calls. I turned my phone to silent mode, unwilling to engage with their attempts to re-establish the status quo without meaningful accountability. At 9:15 p.m., 15 hours after Lydia's blog post had appeared online, our doorbell rang, then rang again. Then a knocking began, persistent but not aggressive. "Who could that be?" Isabella asked, looking up from her laptop where she had been researching Provenance restaurant. I checked the security camera on my phone and was surprised to see Eleanor standing alone on our porch, looking smaller and more fragile than I had ever seen her. "It is your grandmother," I told Isabella. "Alone." Isabella took a deep breath. "I guess we should talk to her." I opened the door to find my mother clutching her purse with both hands, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I know Isabella said tomorrow would be better," she began without preamble, but I could not sleep knowing what happened. "May I please come in?" I stepped aside to let her enter, noticing she was wearing the same clothes from the restaurant dinner the night before, as if she had not been home since then. Isabella stood in the living room, her posture protective but not unwelcoming. "I am so sorry," Eleanor said, looking directly at Isabella. "What I did was unforgivable. I saw the photos of what you created and it was beautiful, more beautiful than any restaurant meal could ever be." "Then why did you cancel?" Isabella asked, her voice small but steady. "Why did you let Grandpa change everything at the last minute?" Eleanor sank onto the edge of our couch, suddenly looking every one of her 65 years. "It is what I have always done," she admitted. "For 43 years I have gone along with your grandfather's decisions to keep the peace, even when I disagreed, even when it hurt people I love." She looked up at Isabella with tear-filled eyes. "But that is no excuse. I should have stood up for you this time." The three of us moved to the dining table where the conversation continued with painful honesty. Eleanor revealed that the restaurant dinner had been tense and uncomfortable, with several family members openly questioning the last-minute change after seeing Lydia's post during the meal. Richard had become increasingly defensive, blaming Eleanor for not managing her daughters properly and causing unnecessary drama. "I spent the night at your Aunt Stephanie's house," Eleanor confessed. "For the first time in our marriage, I could not bear to go home with him afterward." Isabella listened intently, her initial anger softening but not disappearing entirely. "I worked so hard on that dinner, Grandma. Not just the cooking, but learning your favorite recipes, finding ingredients you would love, making decorations that would be meaningful to you." "I know, sweetheart. I saw the photos. And reading about how you turned it into something positive instead of just giving up, that showed a strength I wish I had." The conversation continued late into the evening, covering years of family dynamics and unspoken hurts. I watched my daughter navigate this complex emotional terrain with remarkable maturity, expressing her feelings clearly without cruelty, setting boundaries while still showing compassion for Eleanor's position. "I would like to cook for you properly someday," Isabella told her grandmother as the evening drew to a close. "Maybe a smaller dinner, just the three of us to start." Eleanor wiped away tears. "I would be honored. And I promise I will be there no matter what." After Eleanor left, Isabella and I sat in contemplative silence. The day had brought unexpected developments. Neither of us could have anticipated professional recognition for Isabella's talent, a potential internship opportunity, and the first signs of my mother's independence from my father's control. Today was weird. Isabella finally said, a small smile playing at her lips. "Good weird, I think, but definitely weird." I laughed, releasing some of the tension that had built over the past 48 hours. Life rarely follows the plan, but sometimes the detours lead somewhere important. As we prepared for bed that night, I realized that while the weekend had begun with devastation, it was ending with something that felt remarkably like hope. Isabella's talent had been recognized by a wider audience than our family could have provided. More importantly, she had learned a powerful lesson about resilience and creating meaning from disappointment. My phone buzzed with one final text for the night from Eleanor. "Thank you for letting me in tonight. I am staying with Stephanie for a few more days while I figure things out. For the first time in decades, I am making my own decisions. It is terrifying and liberating all at once." I showed the message to Isabella, who read it thoughtfully. "Maybe Grandma needed this push as much as I needed that internship opportunity," she observed with wisdom beyond her 17 years. "Sometimes good things come from bad situations." Indeed they do, I thought as I turned out the lights. Indeed they do. The weeks following what we came to call the birthday dinner incident brought changes none of us could have predicted. Isabella interviewed with Chef Gabriel and was immediately offered a weekend internship at Provenance, an opportunity almost unheard of for someone her age, without formal culinary training. "He said my sauce work showed exceptional technique," she told me, after her first day practically floating through our front door. "And he wants me to share my raspberry filling recipe with the pastry chef." Watching my daughter blossom in a professional kitchen environment confirmed what I had always suspected: her talent was extraordinary, deserving of recognition far beyond our family circle. Every Saturday and Sunday she would return home exhausted but exhilarated, filled with new knowledge and techniques she was eager to practice during the week. Eleanor made her own brave steps toward independence. After staying with Stephanie for a week, she returned home to Richard with clearly stated boundaries and expectations. Their 43-year dynamic could not change overnight, but small shifts were occurring. Eleanor began making decisions without seeking Richard's approval first, including visiting Provenance one evening to watch Isabella work. "I sat at the chef's table and told everyone that the brilliant young woman in the kitchen was my granddaughter," she reported proudly over coffee the next day. "Richard thought it was inappropriate for me to go alone, but I went anyway." Richard himself remained resistant to change, clinging to his position that the restaurant reservation had been the sensible choice and our reaction had been unnecessarily dramatic. After several weeks of tense family messages and uncomfortable encounters, he finally offered what passed for an apology in his worldview. "I may have been hasty in changing the plans without proper notice," he told Isabella stiffly when they finally met again. "Your cooking appears to be quite accomplished based on the restaurant position you secured." Isabella accepted this limited acknowledgement with more grace than I could have mustered, understanding that it represented significant concession from a man who rarely admitted to any mistake. "Thank you, Grandpa. Next time you want to try my cooking, just let me know in advance so I can prepare properly." The ripple effects through our extended family varied widely. Stephanie expressed genuine remorse for her role in the situation, admitting she should have warned us earlier about Richard's plans. She made efforts to support Eleanor's newfound independence and became one of Isabella's most enthusiastic champions, regularly sharing Lydia's blog post and updates about Isabella's internship on social media. Michael remained more distant, uncomfortable with the disruption to family hierarchies. His wife Christina, however, reached out to Isabella separately, expressing admiration for her cooking and requesting recipes. These small connections helped preserve relationships that might otherwise have fractured completely. 3 weeks after the original birthday, Eleanor requested a do-over celebration, this time on her terms. She asked Isabella to prepare a simple meal for just the three of us, plus Stephanie, to be served in our home. "Nothing elaborate," she insisted. "Just a chance to properly appreciate what you created before." Isabella approached this smaller dinner with the same care, but less pressure, preparing Eleanor's favorite pot roast and a simplified version of the lemon cake. The evening was intimate and healing, with conversation flowing naturally and difficult topics addressed with newfound honesty. The most significant moment came when Eleanor presented Isabella with an envelope containing her great-grandmother's handwritten recipe collection. "These should belong to someone who will honor them properly," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Someone who understands that food is really about love." As spring turned to summer, Isabella's culinary confidence continued to grow. Chef Gabriel increased her responsibilities at Provenance occasionally, allowing her to develop special menu items for weekend service. The local newspaper ran a feature about teen entrepreneurs that prominently featured Isabella's story, bringing another wave of community support. With her senior year of high school approaching, Isabella began researching culinary schools with renewed purpose. What had been a tentative dream now felt like an achievable goal, supported by professional experience and glowing recommendations from Chef Gabriel. "I never would have applied to these programs before," she confessed as we reviewed brochures together. "I would have thought they were out of reach, but now I know I can compete at that level." The transformation in my daughter extended beyond her culinary skills. She carried herself with new confidence, approached setbacks with resilience, and became more comfortable setting healthy boundaries in all her relationships. The painful rejection had somehow accelerated her emotional maturity, teaching lessons about self-worth that might otherwise have taken years to learn. My own relationship with my parents evolved as well. With Eleanor asserting more independence, our conversations became more authentic. She began sharing stories from her earlier life before marriage had subsumed her identity, revealing a spirited young woman I had never fully known existed. "I wanted to attend culinary school too once upon a time," she told Isabella during one of their now regular cooking sessions. "My father said it was an impractical choice for a woman who would eventually be running a household." "That is awful," Grandma Isabella responded, whisking a sauce with practiced efficiency. "It was a different time," Eleanor sighed. "But watching you follow your passion gives me such joy." "You are living a dream I set aside." By midsummer, Isabella had developed enough professional contacts through Provenance to begin catering small events on the side. Her first independent job was a retirement party for one of my real estate colleagues, which led to several referrals. She opened a modest business bank account, solemnly depositing her earnings with plans for culinary school expenses. Perhaps the most unexpected development came from Diane at the community center. Impressed by the impact of Isabella's donated meal, she proposed a monthly special dinner program where Isabella would design a menu that could be prepared by community volunteers, bringing dignity and celebration to people facing food insecurity. "Once a month is all we ask," Diane explained. "You create the recipes, teach our volunteers how to prepare them, and supervise the service. We have secured funding to pay you a stipend for your expertise." Isabella accepted immediately, recognizing the opportunity to give back while further developing her teaching and leadership skills. The monthly community dinners quickly became beloved events, attracting volunteers from across the city and teaching Isabella how to scale her recipes for large groups with varying skill levels. As Eleanor's 66th birthday approached, she made her own plans, inviting the entire family to attend one of Isabella's community dinners as volunteers rather than guests. "I want everyone to see what Isabella has created," she announced firmly, "and to experience the joy of serving others rather than being served." Richard predictably resisted, but to everyone's surprise, Eleanor held firm. "This is my choice, Richard. You may join us or not, as you prefer." He ultimately attended, standing stiffly in the serving line, distributing bread rolls with mechanical precision. By evening's end, however, even he seemed affected by the gratitude of the community members and the evident respect Isabella commanded in the kitchen. Looking back on the events set in motion by that devastating text message months earlier, I am struck by how profoundly our lives changed through what initially felt like simple cruelty. Isabella found her professional path accelerated. Eleanor discovered courage she had suppressed for decades. I learned to set clearer boundaries with my parents while supporting my daughter's remarkable resilience. The deepest lesson emerged. Gradually, family is defined not by obligation or blood, but by actions and choices. The people who show up, who value your efforts, who celebrate your talents, those are your true family, whether connected by genetics or circumstance or choice. Isabella expressed this perfectly one evening as we drove home from a successful catering event. "You know what is weird, Mom? If Grandpa had not canceled on us that day, I might never have met Chef Gabriel or started the community dinner program. I might have just kept cooking for family who did not really appreciate it." Do you ever regret all that work you put into the original dinner? I asked. She considered this carefully. Number. That work showed me what I was capable of. And when everything fell apart, I learned something even more important. What was that? That disappointment does not have to define you. You can take that same energy and redirect it toward people who do value what you offer. Sometimes the worst moments lead you to your right path. Those words have stayed with me, a profound truth from my 17-year-old daughter who turned heartbreak into opportunity, rejection into growth, disappointment into purpose. As we continue our journey, Isabella preparing for culinary school applications and me supporting her dreams while navigating my evolving family relationships, I often think about that pivotal weekend. One text message could have crushed my daughter's spirit and passion. Instead, it became the catalyst for finding her true community and purpose. Life rarely follows the plans we make with such care. The elaborate menus we design, the perfect celebrations we envision, the relationships we think we understand, all can change in an instant. The true measure of our character lies not in avoiding disappointment, but in how we transform it into something meaningful. Have you ever experienced a moment when rejection or disappointment ultimately led you to something better? Please share your story in the comments below. Sometimes hearing how others have turned painful situations into growth helps us recognize the potential in our own challenges. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about our continuing journey. And remember, sometimes when one door closes abruptly, it forces you to look around and discover doors you never noticed before, leading to places far more wonderful than you had planned to go. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to transform your own disappointments into unexpected blessings.